Good morning and
Morning.
Chodesh.
Chodesh
Tov.
Chodesh Tov.
We are at Ayin Ches Amud Beis, about 8 lines from the bottom, 78b. And the Mishnah had mentioned, the Bryce had said that if somebody carries a document, an already paid loan document, that they are chayiv. Now, what value does that have? So the Gemara is going to talk about that, and we need to understand a little bit about the system of paying documents that exists in the Gemara's times. So there's a document had witnesses on it, or it had a handwriting of the one who admitted that he owed the money, and the document could be established and based in. So established and based in means that that others were able to collaborate, that the signature was indeed the witnesses. So it's an established, sort of like a notarized document, and then or you could have a non-notarized, a non-makuyam document. There's also a question of what do you do with a document like this? Does a paid document, does it belong to the one who borrowed the money, and since it's paid, he now gets it, or does it have to be destroyed? Do you write a receipt or not?
Does it add to the fact that the document was paid for by the borrower? He had to buy the paper. He had to pay for the document to be prepared.
That's not significant in this particular conversation, but over here we're really looking for what value or what function does it have in the hands of the seller at this point and the lender at this point. So again, we are in Ayin Ches Amud Beis 78b, about 8-10 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan. Somebody who takes a document that is not yet paid, chayiv. That's a significant document, and so it's an item of significance. You carry that, you transgress, you have to bring a chatas. Mishapara pater. Once it's been paid, so it's a useless document, so you're going to be exempt. However, Rabbi Yehuda says no. Even after it's been a paid document, you still need the document, and therefore, if you carry it, it's a matter of significance. And Yechayev for carrying a significant item in a public domain. So again, the Gemara asks my Benayu, so what's the basis of the machlokas here? Why does Rabbi Yehuda count it as significant or not? So again, we're looking for what significance this already paid document would have. Amar Rabbi Yosef, asa lisha star parua kemenai. So Rabbi Yosef says, you're not allowed to have that document in possession. You have to hand it over to the borrower, because the pasuk says, "Al tishkam alecha avla." Don't leave unjust in your possession, and it's unjust because you may end up requesting funds again from the borrower, because you have a document. You're going to forget that he paid it because you're going to see a document that does not say paid on it. And so you have to give it back to him. Don't leave a document that may end up causing unjust in your possession. So Rav Yehuda says, so there's a need to carry it. You have to give it back. However, the Tanna Kama says no, that you could keep it as long as there's, as we'll see soon, there's going to be ways for him to keep it, and therefore inherently, there's no value to the document anymore. It's already been paid, and so you're carrying a insignificant item, and therefore you don't bring a chatas. Rabbanan savri also l'shay shtar parua. Rabbi Yehuda sava mutar l'shay shtar parua. So Gemara says you're not allowed to keep it, and so therefore you can't use it for any functional thing. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says you have to give it back, and so you're not allowed to use it for anything. Again, we saw they used to use old paper to seal jugs. And so sealing the jug is going to be a functional use of this paper. It's a matter of significance. You have something to do with it. Abaye says no. The machlokes is based on something else. The kuli alma star peru. Everybody agrees. No, you can't leave this document in your possession because you may end up. It may end up causing injustice because you may use this again to collect. So you have to give it back. So you can't use it for to seal a jug. Rather, or rather, the question is whether or not there's even a chance that something bad can come from this. Why? Because the question is when the lender collects with the document and the borrower says, yeah, indeed, that I did write that document. I wrote that IOU. However, I paid it. Since it's a non-mekuyim shtar, it's not been established and based and essentially not notarized. So when I admit that I wrote that document, the value of the document, the reason you can collect with this document is on my word, because I told you that indeed, and I admitted that that is my handwriting. Well, on the basis of that, the halacha is that I can also say it's paid, because pesha aser pesha heter. The mouth that is telling you that this document is real is also telling you that it's already paid. So if we hold that a document like that does not require kiyum, if it requires kiyum, establishing a basin, so then I have the right to deny that it's of any significance because I can say that it's already been paid, and so therefore you can keep it. And if you can keep it, it has value because you can use it as a seal on your jug. However, if it does not require kiyum, so then you have a right to collect with it, and therefore you have to give it back. He says that you have to establish it, and therefore there's when I admit that when I say that I paid it, so I have a right to invalidate the document and say that it's already been paid.
What I was asking before,
yeah,
the paper has intrinsic value as paper. We see that he uses it as a jug stopper. So why? So since that paper was only in his possession, because it was certifying that Reuven owed him money. Now that Reuven paid it off, why doesn't he have to give it back? If it's significant, then it's a possession of Reuven. It wasn't his possession. It was just he was holding it as the piece of paper has intrinsic value. So why doesn't he? Why would he be able to hold on to the paper in the first place? It's not his.
Well, the value of the document that the person who paid for the paying, that was a part of the loan agreement. At this point,
he gets that's ribbis. Then he gets to hold on to an extra thing.
No, I don't know if that counts as ribbis. And maybe he does have to give back the document. That's not our matter. The question is whether he has a usage. That was the previous opinion. Whether he has a usage that he can use in the meantime. So then it's a matter of significance. He's carrying it. Here we're saying is that he has to give it back, since according to Rabbi Yehuda, since he could end up using this document again by mistake, so he has to give it back. He's not allowed to keep it in his possession. So since he has to give it back, it has intrinsic value in the sense of that he can collect with it again. And so it is a valuable document in as much as this is it's a lien on the borrower. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. So I have a document that it does not need to be re-established. It does not need to be notarized, let's call it, in Maston. and therefore I can collect on it. And I have no right to keep it, so I have to give it back to him because it has an intrinsic value that I could now collect on it. So therefore, it is I transgress when I carry it. But then, what does it mean, paid or not paid? This is not a question of whether it's paid or not. It's a question of whether the lender admits it's paid or not. You're right. It's until he admits that it's paid or until he makes a claim that it's not paid. And if he makes a claim that it's not paid, so then it still has a value. And when he makes a claim that it's paid, so there the Chachamim say it's of no value anymore because Pesha Asa Pesha Hitter, the mouth that said that it's a true document, also said that it's already been paid. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, you're still chayiv because the document is collectible. It does create a lien. Rava Amar, now we're on Ein Testament Aleph at the top. And Rava says no. The Kuli album everybody admits that a document, even if you admit that you wrote it, it still needs to be established and based. So at its current state, does not have the intrinsic value. Rather, Machlekes is based upon once it's paid. What's the obligation here? Does he have to give back the document, or can he write a shover? Can he write a receipt? And then it's incumbent upon the borrower to keep evidence of that receipt. Tanakama Savar Kosvan Shover. The Tanakama says you can write a document, a shover, and since you write since you write the receipt, so it's not collectible as it is because the borrower now has a challenge to this document. Rabbi Yehuda says that he does not hold a shover. It does not have to write a receipt. And if he doesn't have to write a receipt, it's still collectible. Rav Ashi says, actually, this document is now in the hands of the borrower. And it has significance. So it's already been paid and already been returned to the borrower. So he's got a IOU that's already, it says on it, paid, it's paid in full. It's got no function at all. So why would Rabbi Yehuda say he's chayiv? There were no credit unions back then. There was no way to establish credit. So how did somebody establish credit? He saved his old paid IOUs. And he went to a lender and he said, look, here is evidence that I pay my documents, I pay my debts. Here's a document that says I borrowed from Ruvain. Go check with Ruvain. I paid on time and I paid in full. So that's the value of it, even though that it's a fully paid up document. So it would seem like it's of no use. It's useful in as much that he can show it. The Mishnah further said, if somebody carries leather, how much leather does it have to be? And it made a distinction between leather and parchment. So first, in leather, leather has to be tanned, right? They put it through a process to soften it. So, somebody who carries leather, how much does he have to carry? None, or could they lost his command? It says already in our Mishnah, enough leather that he can make the semi-leather. Somebody who tans leather on Shabbos also could be the same thing. If it's leather that has not yet been through tanning, so it's not really usable yet for making a command. You can't make an amulet because it's still raw hide. How much does he carry on that in order to count as significant? Amalei Lishna said no distinction either. Enough to make a command, even though he hasn't yet put it through the tanning process. He will. And how do we know that there's no distinction between the requisite amount between when it's already been processed and before it's been processed. Like we learned in the Mishnah. Hamalabi, somebody who whitens the shearings off of a sheep. So we saw a process, either they put nitrate into water and soak it in there. Rambam has some sort of oxidization of it, oxidizing it. And somebody who combs it, and dyes it, and spins it into a thread. And kafel. The measure is between the index finger and the middle finger. That measure double. That's how much it has to be done. You'd chayev for. And also, when you weave, it's going to be that measure. So weaving, you'll get that's a finished product. But the rest of it is all part of the process. It's still in the midst of the process. And yet, any one of those that you did, that same measure of 2 finger breadths, doubled, you'd be chayev. Alma, since it's made for spinning, shiura katavi, the measure is also going to be like spinning, even though you're talking about combing or whitening. It's all going to be the same because it's a part of the process. So you look at the measure that is required, that is significant in the end process. That's how much you'd be chayev for in the earlier process. Since leather is made to be tanned, so to put it through the process of making hides are made into leather. So too shira ubit. So the measure of how much is significant to be chayev, to transgress for carrying, is going to be the same for already been tanned hides made into leather and rawhide. What about leather that's not meant to be? You don't plan. Sorry, hides that you don't plan to actually turn into leather. So you're not going to tan it. Amalei loishna. There too, there's no distinction because the leather is all going to be the same. So Gemara says, there's really no distinction between what's worked and what isn't worked. In other words, what's already been processed and not. We have a contradiction. If you take out spices that they cooked, and that's the way they made dye, if you had enough dye in there, enough color that you could take a small swath of the material and dye it as a switch, as an example of what the color would look like, as a color example. That's the measure. So we see that in the finished product, the dye itself, it's enough for a small example piece. However, if the spices had not been cooked yet, Tanam we learned Kalipi Agoyzin, Kalipa Remainim, Stisupua, Kadelets Baby, and Beged Kota, Lafisav. We see if you take out walnut shells and pomegranate shells and Stisempua, which are some other skins that or plants that they would use for creating dye. So if you have enough to create to dye a small garment, this was basically a garment that would put at the top of their head covering or at the opening of their head covering. So that garment, it actually is bigger than. So if you're taking the raw materials, it has to be more. And by Itmar Allah, Amar Nachbar Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Rabua, because the reason is because nobody's going to actually cook up a little bit of dye in order to make an example. When you cooked up and you already have the dye that you cooked and you made the proper mixture, so then you would take a little bit and you can, and it's a significant measure because you're taking it in order to create in order to create an example of it, and in order to create this small piece that you can show what color the dye is going to end up looking, what it's going to look like in the wool. However, but I'm not going to make such a small amount, and so with the raw material, it's insignificant. I have to carry much more in order to make it a value, a significant measure. Meaning, if in order for it to be of any significance, I have to have enough to make a small garment with. Whereas over here, I could tan even a small piece of leather. What about seeds? The Mekamed de Zarinu, before I plant them, Tananami learns Zarini Gina Pachas Mikra Gregaris. The seeds of a garden, even less than a Gregaris, which is a fig. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Emer, Chamisha, he says 5 seeds. But once they've already been planted, Tanan we learned Zeva v'chol hadak, soil and thin sand. Kadei lezabel by kalach shel kruv. There you have to have enough to fertilize a one furrow, one row of Brussels sprouts. So different Rabbi Kiva, that's what Rabbi Kiva says. The Chachamim said kadei lezabel krisha. And the Chachamim say it's enough to fertilize cress, but it's not enough. 5 seeds or just a little bit. So you see, there is a distinction. Again, the reason is that somebody's not going to take 1 seed out for planting. So if I have a little bit, then it's already been planted. I'm just fertilizing a little bit. That's fine. But if I'm going to plant, so then I have to have enough for a gregaris, a fig size. Varitit. What about in clay, cement? The mekamed ligbele, before you've added water into the mixture. Tani we learned. We saw before that you take out the wastewater that you would use to make this tit. There the measure is a full a revius, a quarter of a lug. We asked what value is there with this water that's going to go to waste. What are you going to do with it? And Rabbi Yirmiyah said, oh, you're going to use it to put into the cement. However, after you've already mixed it and you made the cement, and you have a little cement, how much cement you have to carry? And it's much less. Then we saw Tanya Tit Kadelasas Ben Pikur. That all you have to do is a small ball of clay that you would put on an opening to seal it. That we already explained as well. Because nobody's going to make a mixture of cement for a 1 millimeter a small ball of clay in order to seal a hole. Once you have that cement, so then it may actually be enough in carrying it because it's a matter of significance. You can use it as to seal something. But I'm not going to make clay from the start for that. So in the raw material, I have to carry much more because I'm never going to make anything out of it unless I have at least a little bit. As we saw in the raw material, I'd have to have a revius, 3 ounces of the wastewater, and which is one ingredient in the cement. So that would be a matter of significance. But if you're going to have a little bit of water, say a quarter ounce, a half ounce, which is enough to make that little cement for the whole of the core, that's not going to be a matter of significance because I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to make a clay cement just for a small amount like that. Tashema. So come in here in regards to leathers. So there are 3 stages of leather: matzah, mechipa, v'diftera. That's what the 3 stages are called. So matzah kamashmot. So matzah is as it seems, that it has it's raw. Nothing's been done to it. So it's in the simplest form. So those are hides that nothing has been done to it, and still needs more work done. It hasn't been salted. It hasn't been powdered and it hasn't been rubbed down with afitz, I think is a gall or something, some way to rub it down. V'kamashira. So how much do you have to carry of this raw hide in order to be chayev? Tana Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda kadei lotzer by mishkelas katana. So they would use that to cover weights. When you had a scale, so you needed a counterweight, and you'd carry, if you were a peddler or you had a shop, so you'd carry around the weights. And in order to make sure that they don't get rubbed out, so you'd have a piece of leather to wrap them in. So that's enough to wrap the a small weight. The kama, and how much is that small weight? A quarter of a litra of the pumpadisa. And so that's the measure of how much of this small weight is. Mr. Rosenberg may be able to tell us from his app what that is.
What's that one? I think it's gold. I think you had it right. Gold nut. Afitz?
No, the how much is a quarter of a pumpadisa litra?
I don't know if they specify pumpadisa. Let me see.
Yeah. And then the next level of hide is a chipa. So what is that? The maliach. It's been salted, so it's been brined. A kamiach, and it has a powder on it to make it smooth. But it's not been rubbed down with the gall. Mekamashiro. So how much is what a piece of leather like that? How much is of significance enough that I can use it in some way? So kedetanan or kedelasas kameya. That's what we're talking about when in our Mishnah when we said that leather it's significant enough that you can make a kameya. So that's this leather that's already been tanned, that already has been salted and kamiach and powdered, but it has not yet been smoothed out. What about when it's completely done? Diftera, which we said the maliach kamiach. The chipa is where it's been salted, but it's not been powdered. Here, diftera is the meliach v'kamiach. It's been salted and powdered, but it's still not been smoothed out with the gall. The kamashira, and what's the measure for that? Could they lichtav alavis? I get a small document enough that somebody can write. I release you, and you can marry anyone you want. My name, your name, in this place, signed. So it's a small handwritten document. But in the first case, in the rawhide, we saw that the calculation for that is enough to wrap a small measure, which Abaye said, "Vama Abaye river the pumpadisa." So it's a small, it's a small measure, and it's different than a kameya, which is in the next one. So you see that prior to having processed the hide, it's going to be a different measure than after it's processed to some degree. So Gemara says there's a distinction between bishula, hasam bishula. There, it's still soft. It's still a soft piece of leather. It's freshly. A soft piece of hide, freshly removed, and therefore it's going to have a different measure. But when it's already dried out, and now it's supposed to be tanned in order to turn it into leather, these hides are going to be the same, whether you already processed it or didn't process it. But tanan abegat shloisha al shloisha lemidras. So we're asking over here as well that we see that there's a distinction the distinction in leather between whether you need 5 tefachim or not. But tonight we learned abegat shloisha al shloisha lemidras. A garment requires 3 by 3. In order to become tamei midras, which we said was pressure, whether you lean on it or sleep on it or sit on it. Hasak, so a garment is 3 by 3. Sackcloth is 4 by 4. Dalet al dalet. Or leather hay al hay is 5 by 5. A mapets and a mat. so woven reed material, zvav al vav, and less than that is of no significance. So bein lamidras, whether it's in regards to the susceptibility of tumah of midras of pressure, bein lameis, whether it's susceptibility of tumah in contact or coming to contact with the deceased person. But Tani alone, we learned in regards to that manner, habeged vasak va'or kashir l'tumah kashir lo'itzah. We saw that just like this exact measure, that it's going to be a sackcloth is going to be more than regular garment, and leather is going to be more than sackcloth in size, in susceptibility to tumah, so too it's going to be in this measure in regards to carrying on Shabbos. It's not going to be significant to carry on Shabbos unless it's 5 by 5. So the Gemara says, "Ahu bekur tuvla." That's a type of leather that's been boiled, and it hardens it, and it's made specifically for sitting on, and that's why it's tumah midras, the tumah pressure, because it's made for sitting. That's the type of it's a specific type of leather. It's not the soft leather that you're going to wrap weight around. This is a hardened, boiled leather that's made as a seat cushion. We turn the page to Ayin Tesamid base. And the principle of all of these is essentially at what point, what is a practical usage that's going to be the smallest amount that someone could say, look, that's a usage that you could have, and therefore it's a matter of significance. And when you carried it, you didn't just carry lint in your pocket. It's actually an item. Klaf. So our Mishnah had said, klaf is parchment. They lift up a parsha in order to write a small parsha, which we said was Shema Yisrael, that parsha tefillah. Now, we need to understand for this next part of the Gemara that hides would be split into different parts of parchment. You can have the entire hide, which is really a pretty thick piece of leather. And then you would split the hide in its thickness. So it would make it into a thinner piece parchment, right? If you look at the parchment we have for Sefer Torah and so on, they're not the full thickness of the hide. Rather, it's been thinned. So the outer side would be the side where the body hair is of that animal. The inner side is one closer to the animal muscle, and they would write on one side of those, and one side is considered klaf, the other side is considered duchsustus. There's a great discussion in Machlokes and Rishonim which part is which. In any case, but you have klaf, parchment, and duchsustus, which is the other part of the other part of the hide. So klaf v'duchsustus, kedei lichtav al mezuzah. Klaf and duchsustus are the two parts of the leather that are turned into parchment, one parchment and one the other part. Enough, if you carried enough to write a mezuzah. So my mezuzah, what do we mean by mezuzah? Mezuzah Shabbat tefillin. What we mean is the scroll in the tefillin, and we're calling the scroll mezuzah, even though mezuzah means a doorpost. But since we use a scroll to affix to a doorpost, so scrolls were called mezuzah. So the scroll inside the tefillin, to distinguish from the entire tefillin, is called the mezuzah, the scroll of the tefillin. The Gemara says, really, v'karlei l'tefillin mezuzah? Do we really call the scroll of the mezuzah, of the tefillin, a mezuzah? Indeed, Vatani we learned Ritzur Shabbat tefillin and tefillin, Vatamas is the Yadayim. In the Yudches Davar, we learned early in the Masechta that by Hillel and Shammai that they enacted tumah on the hands, and one of the tumas was that the tefillin will be tummy, you shouldn't touch them. Vatamas Yadayim, whether the straps or the tefillin b'fnei atzman, if they're alone, then they don't make tumah. If you touch these straps, that's not tumah. That only if you touch the base of the tefillin itself, the box. And Rabbi Zaki says no. There's no tumah in for the hands in touching the straps or the box, but rather if you touch the inside, the scroll inside, and he calls it the scroll inside. He calls mezuzah. So you see that the scroll inside the mezuzah, inside the tefillin, is called a mezuzah. What about what we said that the parchment is enough to write a small piece of tefillin, meaning a small, in the tefillin, you have 4 boxes in the shalrosh, and in each box you have a scroll. So the smallest of those parshas, of those sections, is Shema v'ahavta. And to write that one, Shehi Shema Yisrael, Mechlal Dereisha b'mezuzah atzma askina. Well, since we said the small parsha, the small section of tefillin, and we didn't call it a mezuzah, so when we said mezuzah at the beginning, must be we're talking about mezuzah as we know it, the scroll that we affix to the doorpost. So here's what we learn. How much do you have to take for kalaf and duchsustus? So duchsustus, for duchsustus, it's enough to write a mezuzah scroll. Kalaf and the parchment, that's to write the small parsha of tefillin, which is Shehi Shema Yisrael. So we're distinguishing and saying duchsustus is used for the mezuzah scroll on the door, and kalaf, which is the parchment, that's used for the tefillin, the box, the scroll inside the box of the tefillin. Amar Rav, duchsustus harehi kalaf. Duchsustus and kalaf are the same, and they have the same rule. Ma kalaf kaisin of tefillin, just as parchment you write tefillin on it. Av duchsustus kaisin of tefillin, so too duchsustus you can write tefillin on it. So the Gemara says, wait, what we just read, Tanan kalaf kadei lichta parsha ktana shabbat tefillin shishma Yisrael. Well, only for parchment it's the size of writing tefillin. Whereas on duchsustus we said it's the size of writing a mezuzah, which has v'hoya in it as well. So that's different. If you can write on duchsustus as well a tefillin parsha, so why do you need a size of duchsustus enough to write a mezuzah for the doorpost? Why not the smaller one, a smaller measure? If I can use duchsustus, which is the other part of the parchment, for tefillin as well, so then it should be a matter of significance even for a smaller size. So Gemara says lo mitzvah. Well, even though that it is kosher, but it's not the appropriate way. It's not the best way of making it tefillin. Your tefillin really should be written on kalaf, on the parchment part, not on the duchsustus part. So even though it's a kosher tefillin, but it isn't the appropriate way to do it, and so most people don't. And so when we're talking about what's a normal size of usable parchment, then it's to write the small measure, the small parsha tefillin. Whereas what's the size of a duchsustus, that usually you don't use for tefillin. So the smallest typical usable size of that is going to be enough to write a mezuzah. Tashema. Let's come in here and analyze it. We learned halacha Moshe Sinai. There's a halacha from Moshe Sinai, and we know many of the halachas of tefillin are halacha Moshe Sinai, such as squared black leather box, the letters of the shin on the shalrosh and the dalet and yud on the knots. Those are all halacha Moshe Sinai. So halacha Moshe Sinai tefillin ala klaf. There's a halacha Moshe Sinai that tefillin has to be on parchment. Umezuzah al duchsustus, and that mezuzah can be on duchsustus. So we see that it's halacha Moshe Sinai, klaf b'makim basar, and klaf on the side of the hide, the muscle, and duchsustus b'makim seir, and duchsustus on the side of the hairs. So there's a question in the postka in the Rishonim whether this means that's defining which side is the klaf and which side is the duchsustus. The outer side is the duchsustus, the inner side is the klaf, or it's the other way around. And what it's defining is on which side of that piece do you write? Meaning on the outer side, you write on the inner. So basically, if you had leather and this was a piece of leather, you split in the middle. Now you have two. The outer side, you have to write on the inside of it, the side closer to the muscle. And the inner side, you have to write the side that's closer to the split. So basically, you're writing on the split of the leather, as opposed to the side that had hair on it or the side that had was attached to the muscle. In any case, so over here it says klaf is the side of the basar, of the muscle, and the susus is the side of the hair. And again, we see that tefillin is written on the klaf. So I said la mitzvah. Again, that's the appropriate way to do it, but it isn't actually an obligation. Vatanya Shina puzzle. Well, but it says that if you changed it and you did it the opposite way, it's going to be invalid. So how can you, Rav, say that the chsusis is kosher for tefillin? What we said, if you did it in the other way around, it's going to be invalid. A mezuzah, that's on the second part. If you made a mezuzah with klaf, that's going to be invalid. And where it says, Vatani, we have a brisa shina b'zeh puzzle. There's a brisa explicitly says if you changed either one of them, it's going to be invalid. Either mezuzah. It's both, and this is what it means. Here, where you wrote it on the klaf, but on the wrong side, you wrote it on the hair side as opposed to the other side. Or if your mezuzah was written on duchsustus, on the opposite side that it's supposed to be written. Or what we can say is actually this whole matter is a machlokas tanai. The Tani we learned in the Brisa, Shina b'zeh puzzle. The Brisa says that if you changed either mezuzah or tefillin in any one of them, you wrote one on the susus, one on klaf, it's going to be invalid. However, Rabbi Achi says, Mishum Rabbi Achi bar Chanina. Mishum Rabbi Yaakov bar Chanina. Either Rabbi Achi bar Chanina or Yaakov bar Chanina said that it's going to be kosher regardless of which way you did it. And Rav is going to follow the opinion of Rabbi Achi that on tefillin, that you wrote it on the susus, is also going to be kosher. Papa Amar Rav, the Amar Katana, the Bey Menashe. Rav Papa says that Rav actually is following the opinion of the Academy of Menashe. The Tanya we learned, and here we're going to get into another term, and the term gavil. So Rashi learns that gavil is a completely worked hide, and not only did you rub it, we saw that you tan it, you put it into salt and a brine, and you powdered it, and you rubbed it with the gall as well. So Rabba Amarav Tanave Menashe, the Tanave Menashe, Kasva ala Niyor, he wrote on paper, Ba'al matlis, or on a cloth. Psula, it's going to be puzzle. However, if he wrote it ala klaf, va'ala gvil, va'al duchsustus, if he wrote it on parchment, on gvil, which is a leather that has been fully worked, or duchsustus, which we said was the other part of the split leather, ksher, it's going to be kosher. Kasma, mai. What is it talking about? What this Bey Menashe, it says that he wrote it. What is it talking about? Ilema mezuzah. Are we talking about a mezuzah? He wrote his mezuzah on these mezuzah klaf mikasvina. Are you allowed to write a mezuzah on klaf? After all, we just saw that mezuzah has to be written on duchsustus. El alav tefillin. Must be we're talking about tefillin. Ulatamech tefillin agavel mikasvina. Well, can you write tefillin on just a piece of leather? On gavil, which is the completely processed leather. Ella kitanya he Sefer Torah. Rather, that is talking about a Sefer Torah, and a Sefer Torah you can write on any of these. Lema Masayalin. Let's bring proof to that. We learned also tefillin and Sefer Torah. All things that are holy, you only go up in holiness, and you can't bring it down. And so we learned that a mezuzah is a lower level than a Sefer Torah. So if your Sefer Torah gets rubbed out, it can no longer be used in the shul. So you've got an idea. I'm going to take the part that is from the mezuzah, and I'm going to cut it out of the Sefer Torah, and I'm going to fix it to my door. And I got myself a mezuzah. So you can't do that. Ein osim mehem mezuzah, fisha ein moridim kedusha chamura lekedusha kala, because you can't lower something from its kedusha. It has a higher kedusha. It's a sefer Torah. You can't take it down to a lower level kedusha, being a lower level holiness, making it into a mezuzah. Time of day meridim. And the only we see is that the only issue is that you can't bring it down to a lower level. But if not for that, hamaridin osim. But otherwise, that you could do it. It's only a technicality that you're not allowed to bring it to lower level. But wait, what's it written on? The kasiva amai. What's it written on? Lav the kasiva duchsustus. Wouldn't you say it's written on duchsustus, and that's why I can make it into a mezuzah? Lo the kasiva al kalaf. No, the Sefer Torah was written on kalaf, on parchment, and yet we're saying that I could make it into mezuzah if not for the fact that it's a lower level. Mezuzah kalaf mikasmina. Wait, but can you write mezuzah on kalaf? Yes, indeed. Vatani, we learned kasva la kalaf al niyar al amatlas psula. But we learned that if you wrote it on parchment, paper, or a cloth, it's going to be invalid. No, actually, Rabbi Meir would write his mezuzahs on parchment because it was actually better for it because it would last longer. So therefore, we can actually say that the statement of Rav is the reverse. Not that duchsustus is as valuable is as kosher as klaf, but the other way around. Klaf is as kosher as duchsustus, and that that you're allowed to. And the point of Rav is that you're allowed to write a mezuzah on klaf, just as Rabbi Meir would do. Ma duchsustus kosher al mezuzah, af klaf kosher al mezuzah. That it's kosher to write not only on a duchsustus but also on klaf, on parchment. And as we do, you can write your mezuzah on regular parchment as well.